Hey, Scott from Aristocob.com here.
And Seth from SethMarkwood.com.
Together along with you, the three of us, we are Markwood Men's Breakfast Club. So welcome once again, or if you're here for the first time, we've been waiting for you. And good morning, boy.
Good morning, Homer. Hey, will you pass me the dish so I can offload this and fill up
Well,
again?
this does have a big magnet on the bottom, so don't put it anywhere near your devices, all right?
As long as I don't just dump my ash on the floor like I did last week.
So we are recording this. This is kind of old school style. Since we've been doing live videos, we haven't been recording. But Boy at this very moment is in Paducah, Kentucky. And I am going to be sitting in live in the chat. So let's chat as we have this conversation tonight. And we kind of teased last week a little bit that Boy and I just spent several hours with his brother-in-law, Isaac. Now, he was the guest on the show a few months ago, and we talked with him about his experience as a craftsman who was working with a relatively popular woodworking YouTuber. Not just woodworking, right? She is Anne of all trades, you know. And he's very intimidated and shy in front of the camera, and what that experience did for him is it really kind of woke up that desire to share through video. So he is going to be launching a channel, and if he has already, we'll link to it below, and if he hasn't, we'll make sure we get the information so that we can link to it below. But he is a contractor. He can build anything that you want built that's construction, such as a barn, a fence. He can do anything.
Chicken coops.
But he is exploring, number one, building a wood shop, and then learning how to use those tools. And so the idea behind his channel is really to kind of join him on his journey as he learns to master those tools and create the things that he wants. So he invited us over the other day because he just got a bunch of tools, some that he purchased and some that were loaned to him by a friend who just had them in storage. And the tools that were in storage were all Shopsmith tools. So he knew who to call. And he also has a young man who is a neighbor who is helping him out while he's waiting to go back to college. And oddly enough, come to find out that this young man was an intern at my employer last year. And so we introduced ourselves, and I didn't recall him, and the reason is he was working in a whole other area of the company. But that was kind of a fun connection. But the young guy, Nick, is helping Isaac in not just manual labor around the shop, but is really going to help him as he prepares to do his video editing and capturing and social media and stuff like that. So thought we would talk a little bit about what he has tool wise, and the biggest surprise I think was he really wants to do some turning. He has a table saw, so he's not going to use the Shopsmith so much as a table saw. And the version of the Shopsmith that he has now is an old version that was not known for being a great table saw. The saw table on the Shopsmith Mark V Model 500, this was the version that was introduced back in the 1950s, mid-50s, and was produced until probably 20 years ago, has a very small table. I'm guessing about 17 inches wide. And but he wants to be able to use it as a drill press, as a lathe, as a disc sander, the other functions of the Mark V. He also got a 12-inch Shopsmith planer, freestanding planer, which wasn't working. And he also has a tool called a power station that is a variable speed stand that you can run the accessories of the Mark V, the separate tools such as a bandsaw, belt sander, strip sander, jigsaw, scroll saw, and they had, when he picked that up, they had a, and that, you're looking at a 510 model there. Oh, there's a 500 right there on the page.
Yep.
So the power station that he has, he only had one standalone tool on it, and that was the jointer. And oddly enough, the one tool I would never run on a power station is a jointer. And the reason for that, when on the PTO, the power takeoff side of that power plant, the one that runs the accessories, there are two spindles. The top spindle runs at the same speed as the saw blade, the drill press, chuck, and so on. And a lower spindle runs at 1.6 times the speed of the upper spindle.
So if you want to explain, they can now see.
Okay, so the Shopsmith is, if you were to give this tool a generic name, what is it? It is a lathe-based multi-purpose tool. So when it's nothing else, it's a lathe. And from there, that lathe is for turning things like spindles or bowls. But then it also transforms into a bunch of tools. Right now, that one is configured as a table saw. And you can see the main table, which is the table that's on top of the power plant, called a headstock. That's that small table I was describing. And yes, you do have an extension table off to the side, and they have a rip fence on that one right now. So in this configuration, you could cut to the middle of a 4x8 sheet. You'd never do it again if you did, because it's just not enough table to support big pieces of stock. The version of the Mark V I have, and actually I have several different versions, but the most recent versions are the Model 510 and the Model 520. And there's also now a Mark VII. The Mark VII has some additional features, including the ability to tilt not only up into a drill press, but to tilt the opposite direction so that the headstock is underneath the table. So for running the shaper bits, for router bits, things like that, that is theoretically more convenient having all that underneath the table. I say theoretically because I don't care for the Mark VII.
So for those of you that are lost, let me take a step back.
Take a step back.
The Mark V is the George Foreman grill of shop tools.
That's the Mixmaster.
It's the George Foreman grill of shop tools, the one with the interchangeable plates.
Okay.
Right?
So you can make waffles.
So there is a heart of the machine, which is the motor piece. Onto that, there are different accessories and pieces that allows one tool to be built into 5 tools. So it's the Leatherman, it's the multi-tool. So just like the George Foreman grill can be a griddle, it can be a hamburger grill, it can make pancakes and waffles and those little weird shaped omelet things.
And grilled cheese sandwiches.
And grilled cheese sandwiches. The Mark V is the same way. And so it's a great tool for beginners who don't have a lot of shop space and need something that is modular so that they can achieve multiple things that would take up a much larger shop and a small, compact kind of Swiss Army knife of a tool set. And so what Homer's been running through is some of the different advantages and disadvantages of this particular version of that multi-tool. Mm-hmm. So it's like what Isaac got is the George Foreman grill that doesn't open all the way and it doesn't have the removable plates. And so, it's good, but there were better ones that came later.
Yeah, I mean, that's a venerable tool. Like I said, made from 1955 until about 2000, right? So, and over 1 million of those were produced and sold around the world. And, the biggest problem with the Shopsmith is they never die. Mm-hmm. So that's a benefit to you if you buy one or want to buy one on the secondary market. It's a horrible thing if you're a manufacturer of them and you would like for them to die. They just don't die. Right. And so the used market has put quite a hurt on Shopsmith. And back in the day, before eBay and Craigslist, it wasn't so easy to get in touch with a guy that happened to have one in the basement that he wasn't using. Now, all of those tools are real easy to get back on the market. And there are even people that are parting them out. And so you need a spare part, and you know that those machines don't die, the guy just happened to buy one and decided to part it out, you can buy components from an old machine and it'll work just fine. They're 100% interchangeable for that period, 1955 to 2000.
It's a really big window
It's huge.
to have interchangeable parts.
It's huge. And even the versions made after that, that entire base, the tubes, the power plant, all still 100% interchangeable with the old versions. So what it turned out happened was there's at least one box of parts that didn't come with that equipment that is in the guy's storage still. And that one box is all the little things that you need for the tool to do what it does. So for example, when you operate a lathe, on one end of the lathe, you have to support a spindle on something called a cup center or a live center. It's just a point that spins. On the other end, you have a drive center. It's a point that is powered by the headstock and digs into the wood and spins. He doesn't have either of those parts. He doesn't have the tool rest to rest the lathe chisels on. Without that, it doesn't function as a lathe. He didn't get a saw blade or an arbor to put the saw blade on, and so on and so on. So there's a whole list of items. Now, what was really cool is I was throwing some pictures up on Instagram. I have a feed on Instagram called My Growth Rings, and one of my other YouTube channels is My Growth Rings, and a blog is mygrowthrings.com. I posted some pictures of our visit to the shop. Got popped. And I accidentally had a picture of the list of things that we needed. And before I knew that it was there, I got a private message from somebody saying, we were at lunch eating chicken wings, saying, "Hey, I've got this and this and this, and great price, and I'll throw in the shipping for free." And so I realized that I did that. I went back and took that picture and scratched out a couple items and went ahead and posted it and said, "Okay, that's great. If you happen to have these components, let me know." So, we will be able to get that machine up and running for Isaac. And, like there's no drill chuck. There's no chuck key for the drill chuck. But we'll be able to get him a lot of foundational woodworking tools up and running.
Yeah.
He does have a separate table saw, an old Craftsman table saw, which itself wasn't in great shape. But what he did with that was he built an auxiliary table that fits down perfectly on top of that, extended the capacity of the saw, gave him a zero clearance insert because he just raised the blade up through the MDF table, and then he made himself this massive fence to go on it. And so just that build alone will be interesting for people to see. The problem with the planer was it wasn't feeding. Well, he didn't realize that there is a variable speed motor or variable speed switch, and the motor that feeds it is plugged into that switch, and it wasn't properly plugged in. So all we had to do was first thing I did, just like the IT department would tell you, is it plugged in? I'm checking all the plug-in points, and no, it was not plugged in. So now he's got a 12-inch planer that has a 4-inch capacity, right? So imagine a 12-inch wide, 4-inch thick beam of wood. He's set for planing anything he wants. He also, with that, got a tool called a Joint-Matic, which is a tool that Shopsmith actually bought the rights to produce. And it is a joint-making machine that uses a router. So it's a standalone tool. You don't have to have Shopsmith equipment, just like the planer is a standalone tool. And so with that, he'll be able to make mortise and tenon joints and to cut raised panels. And you can do box joints and dovetails with it, but that's not really the best function that machine performs. So while I was in the shop playing with Isaac and going through the tools and kind of walking through what alignment he was going to need to do, Seth was off with Nick talking about that half of the plan. Tell him about that, boy.
Yeah, so the great challenge of being a man of many talents is choosing which ones to focus on. And so Isaac has, he soaks up knowledge like a sponge, and has developed a number of skills and crafts and trades in the last couple of years, and is at a point where he'd like to not only turn that into a YouTube channel, but continue using it as a business. He's in a little bit of a tricky spot. So previously was working on building a construction company, and he and his wife moved to Seattle for a year for her job. They have come back, and she's looking for jobs.
And that was a one-year gig.
It was. Right? It was an internship. And so she is now graduated. She is likely to get a job at a hospital, a regional hospital, the kind of hospital that 2 or 3 hospitals in a state may have a position open for what she's doing. And so they're really limited based off of what the needs are. And so they may end up anywhere. They could end up anywhere in the U.S. Because of her job. And so he doesn't really want to invest a lot of time right now in building another local business. He'd like to build something that he doesn't have to start all over again if he has to move 4 hours away. So YouTube is one avenue for that. We talked a lot about, I talked with Nick about some of the best practices. They've taken a lot of video footage, and now comes the difficult part of trimming it down and editing and deciding what to leave out, and how that's just as important or even more so than what you put in.
It's so hard to do.
It is. One of the, they were talking about equipment, what should they use, and my advice to them is the advice I would give to any aspiring YouTuber. The equipment you use doesn't matter. The name of your channel doesn't matter. What matters is that you know the purpose of the channel you're creating, and that you stay true to that purpose, and that you put out good, enjoyable, authentic content.
That purpose is also knowing the audience and what the audience wants.
It can be. Right? It can be. I mean, so it depends, right? I think that if your purpose is to build an audience that will pay you money someday, then that's really important. If your purpose is to just have an excuse to get together and hang out, then it doesn't matter so much.
And you have the Mark Woodman's Breakfast Club channel.
That's right. And so, we have talked ad nauseum about the fact that if we wanted to have a big channel, if that was our purpose, we would do things very differently. That's not. And so we know that the fact that one week we talk about pipes, and the next week we talk about woodworking tools, and the next week we talk about video games and board games, that limits our scope, because our core audience really isn't into a lot of the stuff that's not pipe related, and that's okay. But we know that, right? That's not the purpose of our channel. For him, the purpose is going to be to build an audience, to build a following, hopefully build an audience of practitioners, because what he wants is people who aren't just watching his videos for entertainment value, but they're watching it for inspiration, for education, and that they'll actually take some practical steps to do things. And so, what that means for him is that means potentially being able to sell plans, being able to have a Patreon set up where they're paying for more in-depth information and knowledge, being able to kind of split out some of the pieces of content. And so talked a lot about that. The other thing is talking about how the name of your channel doesn't matter. Lots of big old channels have stupid, silly names that don't matter. I mean, who would have thought that one of the biggest companies in the world is Apple? It's a fruit. Like, the name is meaningless. Amazon, what does that mean? Google, what does that mean? Nothing. What matters is what they're producing. And the other thing is, it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be high expense, high production quality. And so I think, like a lot of people wanting to jump into YouTube, especially having had some experience with an experienced YouTuber, he wants to get a high quality camera and wants to make sure he's got really nice lighting and really nice equipment.
All good things.
They are good things, but they're not necessary to build an audience. And so, it was his birthday this past weekend. I bought him a set of these lapel mics so that he can have good audio. And they've been using his drone for 4K shots and a whole lot of stuff. So talked about that process with Nick, and really what the biggest piece of advice I gave them is to not get bogged down in the details and to have a bias towards action. Because they've spent a lot of time trying to find the perfect name, the perfect this, the perfect that. And in the process, nothing's happening. So,
I was looking through some notes.
and I'm excited. I'm excited because right now, when this airs, I'm with Isaac for the whole week. And one of the things we're excited about is I have been working with him on, as a business consultant, working with him on some of this stuff. And so my hope is that during this week, I'll be able to help him out with some branding, some marketing, some video editing, and really kind of give him a jump start in this process that he's kind of been needing.
I was taking some notes, looking at some notes the other day about some of the things that I have planned for my woodworking channel. And
It's Wood Wishes, right?
no, it's not. If you don't know,
Since when?
I have a channel. I mentioned it already, called My Growth Rings, and
I thought that was just the subtitle. I thought it was Wood Wishes,
as parenthetical.
My Growth Rings. Yeah.
For the last 3-4 weeks, I've put out a weekly video, and so I'm trying to be
Unsubscribe to that. Unsubscribe to Wood Wishes. So I haven't seen those videos. Sorry.
Yeah. I've been trying to be consistent there, but like Isaac, my plan ultimately is to have content that is off of YouTube, content that's behind a paywall, and on YouTube I will have the entertainment portion for people that just want to watch and see somebody doing something, maybe learn something great. But for the folks that really, truly, wish that, hey, could I come and hang out with you and learn how to use this equipment? I used to be able to do that. I can't do that now. And so that type of content is going to be somewhere else, and they'll be able to get that content on demand. And so that's my plan. I looked into Patreon. I have a Patreon account where I am a patron of a number of people, but I don't think Patreon's right for me.
Why?
For that? That's a really good question. I think the most important thing for me with what I want to do is I want for someone to be able to select a course and just go and take the course. And that course will be thought out and planned from beginning to end to help them to achieve a certain outcome. With Patreon, it's almost like a blog format, and you have all that content there posted, and you can have videos and all those things, but there's not a way to easily separate out the different content. And so, like I said, there are some folks. Chris from ClickSpring does Patreon better than anybody I have ever met. He does it the way it should be done, and every video he puts out the YouTube version, and then he puts the behind the scenes, voiceover, more deep details. And this is a guy who's doing mechanical things, clock making and stuff like that. And he knows that the YouTube people are there to be entertained. And if they really want to do what he's doing, some of the down and dirty, and let's face it, even boring stuff, he'll share that over on Patreon. So he's got plans, and he's got some, there's some community type stuff, some conversations that take place there as well, and that's really good. With the company that I'm looking at, they don't really have so much that, so there will be a Facebook group that's specific to the folks that are interested in getting training. Probably do some live training, so that means you would be a part of a class. You'd start at a certain time, and there would be content added on a weekly basis in all likelihood, and then a weekly live Zoom meeting to discuss some of the things that hopefully they've learned throughout that week. Any questions? Have you tried this? And what was your experience? And so on.
I think I'm not subscribed. I'm not subscribed to anybody on Patreon, but I think it's a different type of content. But Wheezy Waiter,
oh yes,
I suspect has a good patron. Patreon because he does weekly YouTube videos, but he does, I think, daily like vlog videos for his Patreon, which is so smart because the amount of effort that goes into doing a daily video is draining, and to only be doing it for people that are paying to see it
Yeah.
is so smart.
Yeah, no, that's true. So some of the tips that I wanted to pass on to Isaac, and I'll just go ahead and share some of these with you. One of the biggest things, and I was telling Seth just this weekend, is you run into this mental roadblock where you have something called imposter syndrome, where you can doubt whether or not you're really the right voice, the right guide. And so some of the advice here is, with training like this, the fact that you know more and have more experience than your audience, today more than ever, you don't have to have a degree in the thing you're teaching. If you were teaching in a college, you'd have to have a degree, right? But online streaming content, it's not necessary.
So to that, the way I've heard it explained best is that you don't have to be the expert, and you shouldn't view yourself as the expert. You're the neighbor who bought the tool 2 weeks before your friend. And so, that helps, I think, overcome imposter syndrome a little bit, because I think it's really easy to think, if I'm making a video about how to use this tool, I need to be an expert on it. You don't. But the fact that you have more knowledge than the person that's watching to learn from your experience is really how you need to be thinking about it. I think it's endearing. There's some genuineness there, because you get to say, hey, next time, somewhere in your video, in your content, you get to say, next time, here's what I learned from this time I screwed it up, and how I'm going to do something different next time.
There's some great YouTube channels that they insist on showing their oops. And they may put it at the end of the video. They may not, interrupt the flow of the video. But that's an important part of learning, is to see the errors that are made. It's all about making a connection. And this is why having some sort of a community aspect is so important, because I can go get a book at the library. I can go, buy a DVD or download a video content, or just watch YouTube. But I think that what somebody wants, if they're trying to learn this equipment, Shopsmith equipment is not complicated. However, it can be complex, and it can be intimidating. And so to have somebody that you can get answers from, and that they're going to have the time for you, I think is important for learning these things. And that people buy from brands that they feel a personal connection. How many T-shirts have we bought from YouTube channels that we just like? We know that Jay is going to be able to, not only use the money, but he's going to appreciate the fact that you wear his T-shirt, and you're a walking billboard for Jay's channel some days.
I've only bought a T-shirt from one channel.
Really? Only one?
Only one. It was ugly. It looked like a badly designed Christmas sweater with a clock and a tree. The whole thing. Yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
So
Didn't sell enough.
I've bought 2 shirts from Jay. I've bought a shirt from Philip DeFranco. A couple others that are not coming to mind, but as a way of showing support.
Plus, I think you bought one of those ugly sweater shirts.
I did buy the ugly sweater shirts.
Yeah. So it's another channel you have supported.
Another important point, we've already just covered it too, is know who your people are. Know who your audience is, and what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, one of the things...
Because I cannot have a person who was a Shopsmith instructor pay for a course thinking they're going to get $100 worth of value if the content was created for a newbie who's going to get $200 worth of value for their $100, right? So you can't be everything to everybody. You just can't.
Well, it goes back to editing and the importance of editing your audience. And Isaac and I have had that conversation that if his goal is to grow a really large YouTube channel and be have a mass audience, that's fine. But his focus and his content is going to have to be entertaining, and that has to be the purpose of it. Mm-hmm. Purpose has to be entertainment. If he wants it to be more educational, he said for him, the target audience is somebody who is looking to be inspired to go out and make something. Maybe not the thing that he is doing, maybe not his exact project, but somebody who is looking to it so they can be educated and try something new for the first time, right? Yeah. But even so, that person is probably only going to be 10% of his overall audience. But if he builds his everything, his approach, if his approach is to target that customer, that perfect customer, then everything else will relate to that in some way. So for that person, the person who is looking for practical help, that's the person who's more likely to pay for a Patreon. That's the person who's more likely to pay $10 for some really good plans for that park bench that they want to make for their backyard, right? That person. If your goal is to target that person, you don't need to be worried about your YouTube channel numbers. You need to be worried about as Seth Godin calls it, the smallest viable audience. He said if you have 1,000 true fans, for most businesses, that's more than enough. Huge. They will sustain you. So,
yep. People will find the teachers that click with them. And I think the quote that I saw recently that I really liked, and I should have written it down, but it's basically, don't take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from. And I think that we know when we see somebody, wow, that guy really knows a lot and he's obnoxious. I wouldn't want to watch another minute of his channel. Mm-hmm. But clearly the guy knows what he's doing, right? I would rather watch somebody who I click with and would want to engage with, even if they don't know everything I know or couldn't really teach me something. I was talking to Seth, there's a channel called Woodworking for Mere Mortals, Steve Ramsey. And I equate Steve's channel to the old Better Homes and Gardens Wood magazine. Better Homes and Gardens Wood magazine is absolutely an entry-level woodworking magazine. And I've subscribed to that magazine for 30 years. And I rarely will go from front to back and get multiple things from it. But it's so well presented. And even that one project that I'll never make, there's an element of that project or the way that they approached it that I really appreciate. So, I'll watch Steve's channel, and Steve did a video on fundamentals of wood screws. Not only did I not learn anything new, he got a couple things wrong. That said, it was so well presented. He did a great job in that content, and I always find it entertaining the way that he approaches that. And from there, it's just a matter of we talked about how Anne in her presentation at the at Workbench Con, how she made a transition from where she was trying to sell furniture, and she would build a table, and the table would sell for $100. The table goes out the door, she makes a few dollars, and that funds her to work another week. And that she learned that if she takes the time to draw up a plan, even if at the end she says, you know what, I don't want to make this project after all, she throws the plan up on her website, makes it available for $5. She says her plans, she makes about $2,000 per plan per year. Right? Mm-hmm. So just taking the time to carefully plan that table out is going to make her some money. Then she writes an article while she is planning out her project. And she has occasionally been asked by a magazine, hey, would you mind writing an article about this or that? She's already got them written. If she doesn't sell the plan, the article, it becomes a blog post. Her blog post gets distilled down even smaller and is used as part of her description in her videos and her Facebook post in support of that video launch.
Yeah.
That gets distilled down and becomes her Instagram description, and that gets distilled down even more, becomes her Twitter post. And she makes then money selling the plans for the table. She makes money from the YouTube AdSense, the share,
plus Amazon
the
affiliates,
share of the
plus
ads. She has Amazon affiliate links. People want to buy her T-shirts and so on. Now that table makes her $20,000 all told, and she gets to keep the table.
right.
And so, we shared that a little bit with Isaac, and it's funny because he worked with Ann, but didn't seem to be involved in the whole scope of that.
Right.
And I think that surprised him a little bit, and I think enlightened him to, wow, that makes sense, because, again, I could build these little park benches or patio benches and maybe make myself $30 per,
Right.
or I could make the plans available. I could shoot a video for YouTube, and then eventually people who do buy that bench from him will be proud that they own an Isaac Starnes workbench back from the days when he was producing workbenches.
Yeah, well, and then
Pretty cool.
And then the other thing is, if you are in the production mindset, finding ways to make templates and to speed that up as well. We did discuss that. I mean, one of the things that I talked with Nick about is he has a background in engineering. He's going to school for that.
Yeah.
And so he has experience working things up in CAD, and he's got experience with 3D printers and CNC machines. And, there is a local makerspace. And so we were talking about if they have parts that they need to mass produce, the makerspace membership would pay for itself, either to mass produce those parts or to produce templates that could then be used for producing them by hand. So
that surprised me years ago when I first started working at Shopsmith, how many people want full-size plans. And it's like, it's just a rectangle. It measures this much by this. Yeah, but do you have a template I can buy? Sure. I'll make you a template out of masonite. We all have different levels of skill, and there's also people that, I don't want to measure anything. I'd like to lay a template down, trace it, and then start cutting.
yeah,
So I do have a brand new tool that I purchased, and I'm going to shoot a video and post it on the Mr. Tool Hunter channel.
EasyTension.com.
EasyTension.com. Easy
Nope.
Tension.
As tension.
So what this device is a tool that is designed to help set the proper tension on a bandsaw. Now, one of the challenges that people that use most bandsaws, a bandsaw made by Sears, Craftsman, by DeWalt, I'm sorry, not DeWalt, made by Delta, by Jet, by Grizzly, is the tensioning of the blade is a challenge. So with a bandsaw, what you have is two wheels. These are basically like spoked wheels, almost like a big metal pulley. And on that, you've got a rubber tire, and that rubber tire drives a band of steel. So imagine like a band of steel that you would band lumber with, okay? But that band of steel has teeth cut into one face, one edge.
Okay.
And you have a lower wheel that is driven, that is attached to a motor or is driven by the Shopsmith in my case. And the upper wheel is on bearings and just spins. So if there's a belt of steel stretched between these two, a band of steel, and then you raise the wheel to tension it, once you have the proper tension, that blade will cut straight. If you don't have the proper tension, the blade will flutter as you cut, and will wander off the line that you're trying to follow. And years ago, I messed up a number of projects by going off the line. And if you go on the waste side of the side of the line where you're going to sand it anyway, no big deal. But if you cut into your project, it becomes a problem. The Shopsmith bandsaw actually has a great tensioning device on it, and I've never had a problem getting the right tension with the Shopsmith bandsaw. But I also have a Delta bandsaw, and the Delta bandsaw is a pain in the butt to get the tension right. So what this tool does that's really rather interesting is it's got 2 rare earth magnets, and then it's got an adjustable screw. And what you do is you place this on the bandsaw blade while the blade is not under tension. And that screw actually sticks out a little further than the 2 magnets. But when the belt is not under tension, the magnets pull that band tight. As you then begin to tension the blade is going to stretch and stretch and stretch until it gets to the point where it can no longer touch all 3 points, and one of the magnets will pull away from the belt. Okay? With these little devices here, each of these little combs have numbers. So you see that says 3/8 and 3/4. This one says 1/4 inch, 3/8 and 1/2 inch. So if I have a 1/2 inch blade on my bandsaw, I put this little comb on here and adjust that screw up till it touches that point. That then would allow this to adjust to the perfect tension without having to trust the gauge that's built into the bandsaw. Those gauges are notoriously inaccurate. That's because there's a little coiled spring that you're applying pressure against, and over time that spring becomes compressed. And what you're adjusting the gauge to is this little colored washer that's floating on top of that spring, and you align that colored washer up with the gauge. Well, if that spring becomes compressed, it's now measuring inaccurately. The Shopsmith blade upper wheel is actually supported with a leaf spring, a big steel spring that cannot become compressed. So it's very accurate. But I want to test this in this theoretically on my Shopsmith bandsaw to see if the gauge on the bandsaw is consistent with this. I was emailing with the gentleman in Maine who produces this, and I asked, will this work with the Shopsmith bandsaw? He goes, not only will it work with the Shopsmith bandsaw, my first bandsaw was a Shopsmith bandsaw. And so I'm looking forward to giving this a try. I'll try it on the My Growth Rings channel if that's of interest to you, and I'll let you know what I think about that. But it's really a neat little gadget. Prior to this, there's industrial gauges that work by clamping them on the blade, and there's a dial indicator. And as the blade goes under tension, it stretches, and the indicator shows you the tension that you're set on. Those are very expensive. And this for, I don't know what this thing costs. Let's say it was less than $40. Easy. So, easy
Cool.
tension.
.com.
.com. I look forward to playing with it and seeing if it's going to work. But with Isaac's channel, I think that if you are interested in being a do-it-yourselfer and watching somebody who knows a lot and is going to learn a lot, I would recommend following along on his channel. Leave him some comments and some thumbs up and some encouragement. He'll appreciate that a lot. And I don't know, anything you wanted to add about that?
No, I don't know what his channel is right now, but as soon as we know, we'll make sure to promote it, and hopefully you guys can go give it a subscribe, thumbs up, all that good stuff, and help give him a little bit of a head start.
If you have a channel that you're doing some do-it-yourself stuff on, mention that down below, and we can all take a look and follow each other, and again, encourage each other. I think it's fun to hang out with people as they learn, and it's a bit of a challenge for me sometimes because the inner trainer in me wants to offer suggestions, and I'm really, really, really learning to just say, "Great job, great job. I like your approach. Thanks for sharing that with us." And to try not to be such a, hey, what you really should have done is this.
Right.
That's not nice. Nobody wants to get that. I mean, they took the time to build the thing, to shoot the video, to edit and share it.
Yeah.
And someday maybe when they notice that I'm commenting and watching their videos, someday they might check out my channel and realize that, maybe there's something to learn.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, let's wrap this up. Shortest Markwood Men's Breakfast Club in 2 months.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, man, we have forgotten how to make
Short videos.
25-minute long videos
Yeah,
without the live comments.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
So it's been good. Look forward to seeing you all next week, and hope that some of you are still around in the live premiere chat, keeping Homer company.
Appreciate that. All right. Make it a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.